Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle podcast Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And I'm proud to have here today with me from the Republic of Ireland, Martin Quigley. Hello and welcome, Martin.
Thank you, Philip. Good morning to you too.
Wonderful, wonderful. I have to say, I'm really looking forward for this conversation, which I'm almost saying every time, but this time it has a special angle because I've been more than 30 years in the spiritual world, and I think I know some things here, some things there. But this is the first time in the pre-recording I ever had a conversation where I'm basically listening to you for 15 minutes, and I'm going like, I never heard a thing of what you're saying. And then I'm
Mhm.
trying to little bit fishing for compliments, saying, has it some connection with that? And you're like, no.
Mm,
Or does it have
mm.
a connection with this? And you're like, no. So I'm so curious to learn something new. And I'm preparing myself mentally for a rare treat. So please, Martin, tell us what you're doing. And I'm excited to
Yeah,
listen.
yeah, very good. Well, I work as a coach trainer. I've written a book called More Than a Number. Enneagram has been around for many centuries, but it has very modern applications in the contemporary world. And in fact, only earlier this month, there was a new book brought out by Dr. Dan Siegel and his outlining the scientific basis to the Enneagram. Although it's an ancient model, it applies very well into modern psychological thinking around personality. So that's the first thing I want to say about it. So I came across it in 1988 for the first time. Actually, my wife introduced me to it, and she did it in a way by handing me a sheet of paper and saying, read this is you, which I duly did, and threw it back to her saying, no, it isn't. So not to be outdone, she rustled again and came up with another piece of paper. And when I read it, it was just a few paragraphs, I sat bolt upright and I said, where did you get this? This is describing me from the inside out. People shouldn't be able to say these things about me, let alone write them down in black and white. So it made a huge impact on me. And I was being asked recently about this introduction, how I came across it. When I was growing up, as a young kid, I was very aware that if my hyper friend came into the room, I'd be equally as hyper. And if my calm, thoughtful friend came into the room, I'd be equally as calm and thoughtful. And I used to think to myself, that's strange. I'm different to different people. And I was very good at following the tribe, not necessarily leading the tribe. And so wherever the tribe wanted to go, wherever the gang wanted to go, I was in for anything. And one thing that fascinated me, I couldn't understand why all my friends followed one particular football club. And later on, into my teens, I struggled with the fact that I could hold two opposing views in my mind at the one time. And it was also like a visceral thing. So in debating, I was useless because I always ended up agreeing with the other side. I prefer to go along with people and keep things all calm and quiet and more interested in what your opinion is and not necessarily even aware of what my own opinion is on matters. These are the kind of things that I used to reflect on from a very young lad. I went to study psychology because I thought it would answer these questions for me, explain so that I could understand them myself. So I came out some years later with a parchment stamped by the university, but no better understanding of myself whatsoever until I read those paragraphs in 1988 and everything fell into place. The type of patterns that I have, they're easy going, they go along with others, they encourage others' points of view. I merge with other people's energies. I do all these things that I was aware of as a young fellow growing up, even into my teens and beyond. Why I didn't voice my own opinions, why I used to stand back and see what was happening first. It all made perfect sense. And here it was on a piece of paper in black and white for me in 1988. So that point had a big impact on me, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and why I've been working with it now for nearly 30 years, studying and working with it for nearly 30 years.
I obviously something's wrong with me here in this conversation because I heard that you talk about numbers and you talk about
Yeah,
personalities like characters, right? And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
in the spiritual world, there's numerous character models and
Yeah.
they're based on different things. So there's like a lot of different character models. But I still don't understand how these numbers come into play, and where do you
Okay.
find these numbers?
The Enneagram
I'm so
model
sorry.
describes, yeah, no, that's good. The Enneagram means 9 in Greek, and gram is a figure. So it's a 9-pointed figure, essentially what the word means. And the Enneagram personality model describes 9 distinct and different ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. There are 9 different views of the world, there are 9 different energies. And essentially the personality aspect of it is our mask to the world. These are patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior that we develop from a young child. And each one of the 9 is designated 1 to 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Not
How
at
do
all.
you find those 9 numbers? How do you find the numbers? The first thing I would very much like to understand.
Yeah. You can do tests. They are useful to a certain degree. They won't tell you what your number is. They might give you an indication, a kind of a pyramid. They work basically on behavior. And you can go online and do tick boxes and you get a report out, etc. My preference is for people to discover their type rather than be handed a piece of paper and says, you are a number, because it's more complicated than that. I prefer to do it in workshops where I describe each of the 9 different views of the world. And then I facilitate people to come to an understanding which one reflects my inner world. And that's about getting your number. So you would hear people in the Enneagram world say, I'm a 1, I'm a 2, I'm a 3, I'm a 4.
Right. I have the second stupid question, because you know that the Kabbalah, analyzing the names, also you get 9 numbers in the Kabbalah. Is it similar,
Yes,
those
it's
9 personalities?
there's similarities in Kabbalah, in Christianity, and Sufism. It's an accumulation of all the going back into the ancient Greek philosophers asking, who am I, and know thyself, and that. When you look at any of the texts in the Enneagram, they tell you nobody quite knows where it came from. But my own understanding of it permeates through all of life, and it has permeated through going back centuries, certainly.
So if I read the Jewish number 1 and its meaning about energy and power and so on and so forth, and if I read your number 1 personality, does it sound similarish, or did you ever compare those two just to start somewhere that I can a little bit relate to?
There's possibly some overlap indeed. Some of the numbers might directly relate, but certainly the characteristics of different points of view would certainly you'd find similarities there. There's
So
been
nobody wants to be
different,
number 4.
you what? To be number
Because
4.
nobody wants to be number 4.
Unless you're a 4 yourself. Just the language is very important. I am not a number. I have patterns of behavior and thought, etc., which are indicative
Yes,
of
yes.
a type 1 or as 1. So I try to get away from I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get people to think of I have
Right,
patterns of 1, or I lead with patterns of 2,
right.
or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
I,
because there's the duality within us, and yeah,
I just
the perfect.
I just try to keep it light. I take it serious, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you. I will be more quiet in the future. Just now, I would like to know, because it is something that I'm working on. If you say that you have the pattern, let's say, of number 1, is there like a degree of 1? Do you focus if it's like 1 plus, 1 minus, is something like that existing, which more or less exists in Ayurveda or in Chinese, where you are a character and you can be this character too much, or you can be this character too little? First question. And second question, does numbers interlink? Is you say at the end of number 1, the character number 3 or 4 is starting, and at the beginning of number 4, character 6 is starting? Is there a path through the numbers,
Yeah.
or that does not exist
Yeah.
in your concept?
The answer to the second question is yes, and I'll say more about that. There is interconnections, absolutely. The first part of the question is the Greek. Depends on who you talk to. The Riso Hudson book, Wisdom of the Enneagram, describes 9 different levels. And that's an interesting way of looking at it. Other people describe it as being uh, more aware or less aware in terms of the differences. So if you get a group of the same type together, they've a certain, like the same operating system, but their apps are different. Their expression of it is very unique to themselves. So it requires a bit of self-reflection to actually to get down and understand yourself deeply, which we're not really geared to do. We don't do it that often. We can also put up a lot of resistance to it. So yes, you may come across people of the same patterns, but might express it differently. But at the core, what's driving them is exactly the same. So that's the way to describe the differences. And there's also other theories about some parental influence or societal influence as you develop may cause you to be more, to carry it more lighter or more tighter. So you might be more of the type and maybe slightly less typical depending on the environment. There's lots of scope for lots of differences, but the important thing is to know that what's at the core of my being, essentially. That's what it's all about. If you look at the Enneagram diagram, and I purposely didn't have one to show you just because it can just complicate it, there are connections. There are 9 different types that are described. And when you come to the Enneagram, you're immediately familiar with 5 of them. First of all, it's in a circle. There's 9 types in the circle on the diagram, and they're all equidistant, and there's no hierarchy. There's no type better or worse than the other. They're just different. Everybody has their gift. Everybody has their challenges, regardless of the type. So in that circle, you would have a type which you can call it your core type, or some people refer to it as home base. But you also may be influenced by the ones either side of you. And within the diagram, there's actually various arrows connecting. Each type is connected to 2 other types by arrows going across the diagram. And they give you more information. And sometimes one of them is referred to as a stress point, and the other one is referred to as the security point. Names are arbitrary. I refer to both of them as resources. Your stress point can be a resource also. And your security point is not something you necessarily often find yourself in, but is a very good beacon in terms of your own development. I need to take on more aspects of that. So there's lots of information, there's lots of layers within the Enneagram. And that's another thing about it. It takes a fair bit of studying and self-reflection and work actually to get a full understanding of it. And the training for teachers, which I'm involved in doing, is quite intensive.
Yep. One thing I like to what you described now, because as I said, there are so many of these. Is this like 3, 6, 8, 9 is interesting because usually it's an interesting number 9, but nevertheless, what I like a lot in your description is it's useless to just go online and ask a couple of questions and here's your number and there you go. Now you are enlightened. That basically it's more like an alchemistic thing that you have to walk a very long path finding your number. And while doing so, you're basically growing and learning and developing. So the search for the number seems to be a very crucial and important part of the spiritual healing process. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's very much the starting point and probably the most important part as well. Some people get it instantly. Other people may start off thinking, oh, I'm this particular type. And a year later, 15 months later, say, no, I do a bit of that, but that's really not at the core of who I am. So depending on where they are in their own journey, that's why I refer to it as a journey. You journey through the Enneagram, you don't do the Enneagram. And understanding the type that describes your inner world best is really the portal. You're now standing at the door. Now I can take this forward. So the first part is just understanding what patterns do I have? Do I have 1, 2, 3, or 4, etc. And the second part is now what do I do with it? How do I get beyond it? Because the patterns we're describing, these thoughts, feelings, and behavior, are things we've developed from early childhood. So they're very much how we survive and how we cope with the world. It's often referred to as a coping strategy. There's 9 different coping strategies, 9 different ways of being in the world.
Yes, interesting.
And we
Right.
suppress our essential being, our core, or to use the word twice, our true self, whatever you like to call it, our real self, our spiritual self. So we live in this duality of having this self and
Hmm.
this other self who we identify with, which is our personality, which is our face to the world.
Right.
And the work of the Enneagram is to bring them together.
Yeah. Now I understand why. Now I really understand your program, and now I understand the spiritual dimension, because
Yeah.
now it's very familiar. Maybe the wording or the starting point, or you
Yes.
found a very specific process, but basically this kind of a process that you just described is the core process in any developed spiritual
Yeah.
system. Whatever wording we may use, whatever symbols we may use, let me rephrase it for anybody watching. Any good spiritual system should have a big amount of self-determination. As you said, you're not just telling people this is what you are and now la la. So no, you have to do the work. You have to put in the
Yeah.
work to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
yourself. And it's so great to hear, because I'm tired of these bad spiritual practices where you're just,
Here. Yeah. Anyway, I say it is a journey. It's a philosophy. It's a way of being. It's recognizing that you have these patterns, but also acknowledging that you have this self as well. That ability to look at your thoughts, to look at to your feelings, and to stand back from them. As if you're standing on the side of the road, then your thoughts and your feelings and behaviors are passing by. You are not in the thought or in the feeling, that you're observing it. And that ability to observe is the starting point for the spiritual journey.
you said
Uh,
in our pre-recording, you said that you have a lot of practical advice, that once people are on the journey, on the search, that you have developed all like really practical tools for each and every
yeah.
different of those 9 ways to help them find themselves. Can you give us maybe 1 or 2 like really concrete examples? Is it, I don't know, is it dancing, singing, or is it reading certain books, or
Yeah, and just from my own experience, when I was talking earlier about I couldn't understand the way I was as a young fella. I have patterns of what we call type 9. Type 9 is known as the mediator or the peacemaker, and we're very easygoing, and we're there. As I say, my mission for life from the patterns of 9 is to hold the space for the rest of the world. I'm here holding peace for the world and trying to attend to everybody else's agenda in the world. And as I say, in that space that I'm holding, there's no space for me. So I disappeared. I've gone into the background, and so for me, my journey is to find my voice. Is to make myself accountable for being seen and being heard. And when I look around at the world today, I lay the blame for all the difficulties in the world firmly at the feet of us 9. Why? Because we've gone along with you. We've facilitated your mad ideas, and we haven't pushed back. So it's now time for us as 9s, as peacemakers, to wake up and assert ourselves in the world and say, stop. So that's my journey, is to reconnect to myself and what's important for me. I get energized by what's important for you, and my own needs, things I want to do, fall by the wayside. So my growth, my journey is to reclaim myself, reconnect with myself, and assert myself into the world. And there's practical ways that I can do that. And that's what I've laid out in the book. And in our spiritual self, each of the 9 types have got different qualities of being. So it's about trying to find those qualities, trying to make space for those qualities, because the type patterns run the show. So it's about managing your type patterns so that there's space for our qualities to come in. So it's not getting rid of one and being totally in the other world. It's about merging. We're here on this world and we are alive and we have our personalities, and it serves us very well. We tend to over lean on it And by overusing what we do automatically, we become asleep to ourselves. It becomes our challenge then. So it's about recognizing I keep responding the same way to every different situation. And by being
Right.
aware of how I do that, now I can give myself choices to do something different. Now I can give myself a choice to say, instead of automatically agreeing with somebody, say,
Mhm.
stop and say, I actually don't agree with that. And my view is this. And that sort of changed the whole dynamic. And that is the spiritual moment for me. But I struggled with the word spirituality, which we spoke in the introduction, probably for the environment I grew up in and the culture I grew up in, where it was weaponized and used as a stick to beat us with. And in my circle, in who are people I work with, I engage, my community, my clients, the word spirituality rarely, if ever, comes up. So I try to approach it without using necessarily the word spirituality, but it's the same work.
Yes. It is just a word. And if it's not necessary, it can be used. It don't have to be used. I'm that I rather more think about the path towards light. That is something that I much more care about than the word spirituality, because that
Oh,
is
wow.
something that I deeply care about, and it's
Yeah.
embedded
Yeah.
in almost every culture that we
Yeah.
have known and discovered. There is a path towards the heavens, the path towards the gods, the path
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
oneself,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
And so this is the path towards light, and that is what I care about. And it's so interesting what you said. I was quite surprised, and I just wrote a small text 3 months ago or 4 months ago, where I also talked about different characters. I use different names, never mind. But there is a person that
Oh.
I most probably it's a nine-ish character for what I have
Oh.
now listened and learned from you. And I just
Yeah.
wrote that the time of the nine is coming and the world needs nine very
Oh.
much. And they
Oh.
should be the new
Oh.
leaders, and we should elect number nines, but who you would call them. I have different names for it, but I wrote a very passionate, small little piece where I was voting for that we need to bring nine into companies in leading positions and politic leading position. And I said because of climate change, less resources, the complexity of the situation, that we need enlightened number nines. And that is so amazing what you said, because we don't need suffering or not incomplete number nines. They are total bad leaders, but enlightened number nines, it would be an amazing solution for every company or every government.
And I would add to that, we need enlightened human beings, regardless of their type passions. All types are asleep to themselves, and for everybody, that it's the same journey. It's going inside. Now, the resistance to that is our personality patterns themselves. Our personality needs an object of attention to do stuff, to do things, not necessarily to sit and navel gaze and be. So all of anyone with any of the nine different patterns, there would be a resistance to going inside. We're not used to it. We don't practice it too often. It's certainly not encouraged in the workplace, in the work environment. And we just need to get that starting point of starting to observe what I'm doing automatically. How often do you get to your destination and you don't have a recollection of the journey you've actually been on? Because you've been thinking about what you're heading into, what your plan is for the day, or else you're thinking about something you're going to do later on, or you're thinking about the mess you've left at home behind you, and all the heartstrings being pulled there. But, and you've driven a vehicle, you've changed lanes, you've turned left, maneuvered around traffic, but you've no necessarily recollection of it. You're doing it on automatic. And our type patterns are like that. They're happening, they're running the show. And that's very important, because when we wake up in the morning, we need to know who we are and how we're going to function in the day. So our type patterns are very important to our survival. They're critical for our survival, in fact. So we can't throw them out. We have to work, we have to notice, oh, I've done it again. In my case, I've just agreed with somebody and I don't agree with, or I said yes and I really mean no. Uh, um, Catching yourself do that makes you more in tune the next time when somebody says something. And I'm more inclined to say, no, I prefer not to do that now, or I prefer to do it later. I don't agree with that now. And the world hasn't stopped because I said that. In the past, I wouldn't have said it. I would have gone along with it. That would have been the urge for me. It's peace at all costs. Let's keep the harmony. Yeah, yeah. And for another type, it's about being correct and doing the right thing and being honest and upfront regardless, and spending time making sure everything is correct, and putting themselves in the back seat, not attending to what they want to do themselves because they want to be seen as doing the right thing. It's not what they
Right.
want to do; it's what they feel they should do. So that's another outlook of the world. Another type, they're totally focused on other people's and looking after other people and connecting with other people and making sure everything's all right for them. And they neglect their own. They don't give any nurturing to themselves.
Yes.
So whereas the personality expression is very different from amongst all of the nine types, the
Yes, of
actual
course.
path is similar, and that's the inner path. And
Yes.
that's what I call the spiritual work. Yeah.
Do you have actually a statistic which of those nine numbers is the most common? Is it different from every country? Have you statistics that are in, say, in America,
Wait,
there are like more threes than fours, and in Japan, there are more five than six? Do you have that kind of numbers?
there's no empirical numbers to say for what's the average spread in the population. We can only say the people who come through the Enneagram and recognize their type. We notice there's less of certain numbers come to trainings and workshops than other types, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's less of them out in the general populace. It could be, but it's not necessarily. And the ratio is greater in females to males in this work for different reasons as well. And so there appears to be more sixes and nines in the world for whatever reason. Is it just because more of them are interested in the work? There's less eights, threes, sevens sometimes because they're too busy doing stuff and might be more resistant to do this type of work. The personality, as I say, wants something to do or wants an object of attention. And going inside is not necessary. And there's no, it's about just being, because there's no object there. So the personality gets a bit upset by that. And it doesn't encourage us to look inside, and in fact resist looking inside. And I even go so far as to say divinity, spirituality in itself can be an object of attention. So the journey is not to go beyond ourselves. Our connecting to ourselves, we're not going to find out in the beyond us. We are going to find whatever it is we're looking for, whatever we want to call it, the light, spirituality, divinity, God, whatever, inside ourselves. We need to connect with ourselves first. I say to him, go to your God, connected, real, and authentic.
That's every serious spiritual path, of course, in its the first stage is connect with
Yeah.
yourself. The
Yeah.
second one
Mm.
usually is connecting with your surrounding and like reflecting of what you have learned. And usually the third
Mm.
one is going back and incorporating all of this to form a better, more settled personality. Then you should go out and seek the universe and the gods as
Mm.
a
Yeah.
more clear or more aware
Yeah.
being so that you are capable of seeing. That's more or less a short version of almost every path out there.
Yeah, it's just the same path, and what is great is people bring different things to it and different understandings and different meanings and different approaches. And I think it just adds to our understanding of ourselves as a human being.
But if you skip the first path, there's nothing else. So that's maybe super important.
Yeah, manipulative even. And sometimes people stop at the number stage. I have a number, I've done the Enneagram. Or in fact, I even saw it somewhere. How do you communicate with a five? This was the kind of a caption for a training program. And I'm saying that's the wrong question. The question is, how do you communicate? Not about how do you communicate with a five. That's manipulation. That's not growth.
And That's why a lot of people study these things, because they want to manipulate, they want to control, they want to guide people, or they want to marketing. I worked many years in marketing, among other things. And of course, we in marketing, we study that stuff super well. So I think we are marketing usually pretty much masters of these kind of personality traits and target groups and things like that. Because as soon as we know what you want or what your desires are, we can put them in front of you. If you know what your weaknesses is, we can massage them. So nobody spends more money on these things. I can tell you from my personal knowledge, millions and millions are spent by the big agencies trying to build those kind of systems, very precise, very detailed, and with access to huge data points to build these profiles, very precise, but not to help people, just to feed them in their failures and in their dreams sometimes, but mainly massaging the failures. So
Yeah, we can be, our personalities are very talented. And it's how we use that talent and how we recognize how we use the talent. I like the description of the Enneagram work being about why I do what I do. The first part is recognize what do I do, and then it's why do I do it. But
maybe it's totally off topic, but why, if I have you here and you've been thinking about this for so many years, let's say I just described that the marketing industry and so on and so forth have a vast knowledge about these types. And most likely now they're using it for bad to sell stuff that you don't need, but they could use the knowledge and they could use these tools. And I hear a lot about in business communities talking about spiritual entrepreneurship. That's a new buzzword that everybody is thinking how to make money with lightening people up for spiritual entrepreneurship. Now, I would like to ask you maybe if it's your question, it is, if not, pass it on. But how do you imagine a society where a lot of money is being made, whatever, to bring in, let's say, those 9 types, making people aware through tools, helping people discover. Let's say the marketing industry realizes I can make a lot of money making people enlightened. That's the new business model. Let's make people enlightened. How do you think a society would look like where, let's say, 30% of the people are more aware?
I think the marketing industry would use it to put people into little boxes and to dehumanize them.
For sure. But let's say they don't. Let's say they say, okay, we make money by enlightening you. That's the new business. So pull 30% of the people.
They'd have to come to me first to be trained.
They will.
Like I think this program should be in schools. It should be part of the culture within organizations, how we deal with each other, how we respect each other, diversity, inclusiveness. It all comes in all of that. You can apply it in any aspect.
How would you describe such a society? How do you think our schools would look like, our businesses would look like if we're more aware, more conscious? Did you ever think about it? How the world might be different? What would you see as being different, like relationships?
Yeah. I think the primary relationship, the relationship with self, would be very different. People's awareness of themselves would be very different. And I think it would change language in terms of not looking for stuff, but being able to look inside and find peace and joy within myself, and being able to radiate that and have better connections, being more authentic, better relationship, better honesty. I think we all deceive ourselves that we are our passions and we've forgotten who we are. So we're going around more connected, more present, more grounded beings. And I would have hoped for more empathy and compassion, both for self and for others. There are certain qualities that we absolutely need in this world at the moment.
It's so interesting because a lot of people would get in panic listening to you and asking themselves, how can we run a military? How can we run big corporations? How can we rule the world if people have empathy? Do you think that we could build a functioning world based on empathy?
I think it has to be a component. We need empathy for ourselves. We need empathy for the environment, the physical space we occupy on Earth. We need empathy in terms of what we put into our foods. We need empathy in terms of how we manage agriculture. We need empathy in terms of the medicine and the whole health. When they become, uh, when the focus becomes the next quarterly share price, we've lost the humanity in what we do, regardless of what area of work we're doing.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I have a lot more clarity after this conversation. I think this, to me, it sounds like a wonderful spiritual, I use the word, spiritual path, a path to enlightenment, which starts by a path to oneself. And I'm with you on empathy in the world. I'm with you in a hope that this path will be spread all over the globe. If you're doing it, if other people are doing it, it's the same path with different languages, different techniques, different awareness, but it's reaching into making peace and harmony with yourself ultimately should lead with more peace and harmony with your surrounding. I'm so thankful for your time. And I will be linking the books and everything, your contact in the video. I'm sure if people have questions, please leave comments on YouTube and connect. We are looking forward. Martin, thank you so very much.